Because writing to me is also a bit of a performance. I love to perform on a page. And I think convince is the right word, persuade, because it's academia.
Everything is
You're like, I'm trying to argue. We're making arguments, right?
There's a certain literacy you have to be a dope performer. It's authenticity, but it's also accountability. Something you said about like looking my audience in the eyes. I had to look these students in the eyes every day, twice a week, because the classroom for me is an everyday space I live in.
I think the burden is that privilege. Now, we haven't earned privilege. Right? We earned our degrees. We've earned our spaces. We've earned these things. But then you got folks with the unearned privileges. Right? The folks who just sort of like can walk in any academic door. The folks who got family with legacies.
Right.
Let's just make sure that the thing that we are studying, what we're doing, that is relevant to me, to my family, to the people we care about. Something what I love so much about your particular work, Crystal, is like it's crystal clear that you care.
Institution will never love me. You know what I'm saying? And yet, here we are working in it. You know what? That is asking for too much. My name is Dr. Crystal Leigh Endsley.
And I'm Dr. Tony Keith, the Jr. And we're here.
Here we are.
We are. Beautiful bookstore, beautiful moment, beautiful time in the grand scheme of things. Happy to be here with you specifically, though, Crystal. I think, for the world, if anything, to know that, we've had a 20-year, if not longer, friendship, colleagueship. We've written together. We've traveled together. We've produced academic scholarship together. We've presented at academic conferences together. But we have a thing. And so I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm so happy to be here with you too, Tone. When I think about the last 20 years and how the world has changed and how we have changed, and evolved creatively as scholars, as people.
Mm-hmm. Talk more about, I'm curious, when you say the world has changed, very big, broad question. We'll start there, but world has changed. What have you seen change in the world, Crystal? And I know that's a big question, but I mean,
the first thing that comes to my mind, if I could be honest, because I'm a college professor, AI right now is like at the crux of so many ethics conversations, at so many conversations in terms of technology and students and critical thinking. What should Chat GPT be used for? What should it not be used for? How do we penalize students? How do we catch them at it? How do we maintain academic integrity? It's really challenging. And so that's kind of at the forefront for me as a college professor right now with students, who are supposed to be writing critically and thinking critically, but also as a poetry and performance professor, right? As a hip hop scholar at NRC, right? Like, what does that do to creativity?
I have lots of questions. What have you seen it do to your students' creativity, if anything? If you've seen it do anything?
It has challenged me, I think, as a teacher first to my assignments cannot just be go write this essay, go write this analysis.
Adapt to pedagogy.
Adapt. So as technology adapts, I've got to adapt, right? But I found, because they'll do the work and they'll answer the questions, but that's really basic sort of, we expect like a first year college student to be able to summarize things or to point out the main idea. But when we push into the upper level courses, and I mean, even us, when I think about us as artists or scholars, or even as hip hop heads, sometimes we want, like we were saying earlier today, meat and potatoes. We need substance. We need something substantial. Chat GPT ain't it, right? And I'm not interested in penalizing students or criminalizing Chat GPT, but I'm also not really interested in incorporating it into every single one of my classes. So I found that I've had to really flip things. So we do a lot more of the writing creative assignments in class itself. So we're writing too corporately.
And you, if I recall, and I feel like I've been to several of your classes. Are they handwriting in your class or are they typing?
I have to specify. I teach in New York City, and these students, a lot of them leave campus to go to directly to work, directly home to care for elders or younger siblings or babies or children. And so they're not coming in carrying school books, like how they came up with like a book sack with books and everything like that. So some of them have their own laptops and some of them are trying to do everything on their phone. And that's it's a broad gap. It's a broad gap. So when I think about what's evolved, you know, a lot has changed and a lot, unfortunately, has stayed the same.
Stayed exactly the same, yeah. I think so much about like how, especially within this conversation of AI, something that I've seen change, and it's something that I'm constantly wrestling with, is handwriting, right? Like the actual practice of taking a pen or a pencil and on a paper and your voice showing up in script is something that I just don't see much of anymore. And it's something that I try to do. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I'm definitely someone who still, to this day, I still take notes. Like if I attend a lecture or sometimes even if I'm reading a really good book, I will make notes and think, but I have a relationship with my handwriting, but I realized that that relationship sort of ended once I got to college. Right? Like, you know, grade K through 12 or whatever, your handwriting, most things in class, sometimes you get like the little blue book and you got to answer the thing. And so, but once I got to college, then it was type up your papers, right? Type up your essays, type up. And so I think that I got so used to typing up things that I think that I've forgotten sometimes what my handwriting is like and how much of a signature is on handwriting. Right? Like something that shows like the loops of your letters. Like that's a very unique, specific thing.
It's intimate.
It is.
It's intimate to imagine a handwritten letter in the mail.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Instead of an email. Yes. I hope this finds you well. It doesn't. Stop emailing. You know? So let me ask you this then. We were just at shout out to Riverdale High School. We were just there earlier today with groups of high school seniors. And you talked a lot about writing in the app on your phone, in the notes app on your phone. So I wonder how has that, I guess, progression for you, if you went from handwriting, do you find that impacts the type of poetry that you write? You know, are we losing something?
Okay, now we get juicy. You know, what I realize now about having my iPhone and the notes app on my phone is it's about convenience. You know, I think so much about like when I was a younger poet writing and handwriting, I would write poems on whatever I can get my hands on. Right? If it was a notebook, if it was a journal, if it was the back of a receipt, but it was about immediate. Like I need to immediately release this feeling, this corporate feel, this sense of urgency. And I think that for me, when it comes down to like now that I've got this device, I can easily click and get to the urgency. But what I will tell you, this is the grim truth, something that I continue to wrestle with is because I can type it on my phone, I can always edit. Right? Like there's sort of this like editing as I'm writing thing that would not necessarily occur when I'm handwriting. Right. So handwriting, I feel like I'd be able to write a whole poem out or write some ideas out and just kind of let it be. And maybe I'll go back later and do some fixing of a thing. But I feel like in real time, I can type a word and then delete it. Yeah. Right. Like it's sort of this like moment of editing. And, you know, I don't know kind of what that's about now that I think about it.
Do you think, I mean, is that a sense of erasure a part of the process of writing? Because, you know, when we think about writing, we think about an outline, a rough draft. We think about revision, which for me, the revision process is always the longest. None of my poems are ever finished. You know what I'm saying? Even once they've seen a stage, like, you know, so for you, is that part of does it allow you to erase process?
Wow. It's a fantastic question. And I don't even know if it's erase process. I think that it's advancing the process itself. Because I'm like, it's the same kind of process of feeling something and purging a thing out of what I'm feeling, right? So if it's if I'm upset or angry or stressed out or have anxiety or some fear or maybe I'm madly in love, whatever the thing is, and I want to just express that thing, I don't necessarily think it's like an erasure of it, but I think it's more just like a move. It's poetry is about the economy of words, and right, and I think that you see where I'm going here, and I think that somehow typing it out creates that economy, right? It makes things a little bit more simple. I realized like, I don't need a 13-letter word for this. I could break this down to 5 words, you know. So I think that it helps with creating the economy, if that makes sense.
The precision. Right?
The detail, the minutia of what I'm trying to get to. Because for me, that's what poetry is about anyway. Right? Is how do I explain the most complicated thing in the most simplest metaphors? How can I explain racism as a boogeyman? How can I, explain, homophobia as, I don't know, a tea kettle cooking on my mama's stove, whatever. But I think there's something about, I think that writing, typing on my phone, perhaps I think in the process, facilitates is probably the better word, this process of creating an economy of words. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, no, that makes perfect sense to me. I love it, and I may borrow. I'm honest to say my sources. But let me ask you this, okay, because you're not only a poet, Tone.
Facts.
You're a scholar. You're an academic. You're a researcher.
I am.
You are. You are. So that life is not about an economy of words. So help me then make that, translate that.
And you use the right word, translate. Because when I think about in the academic context, the ways in which we are required to do massive amounts of reading of peer-reviewed journals and citing scholarship and writing essays that are ginormous to be published in these publications that nobody but people within academia are likely reading.
Yeah.
That mom was not reading.
Correct.
Peer-reviewed journal. Our grandma, they're not reading
Correct.
this. And so I think that for me, what happens is there's a translation. I think that needs to occur from this massive amount of words and concepts and always high level theories into something that is my grandmama can get this. The little boy who lived down the street for me can get this. But I think that it facilitates the translation. And I think there's something about translation that's in there for me.
So
does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense to me because it's the remix, right? It's the art of the remix, right? For scholarship, for poetry. But also, I guess my question then is, so how does performance work for you in both of those spaces, right? So if I'm okay, if I can deliver my poem in my economy of words, and I've been real frugal, I've been thrifty, I got a discount, I got a good deal, right? I'm getting my sheet.
Shout out to the discount on the,
Okay. How then does performance fit into that translation? Because when you're on stage performing, your body translates half of that, right? You embody the content, the delivery, the tone. How then, as a scholar, are you performing if that's strictly on a page, if it's being peer reviewed? And I mean, to be clear, published poetry is also peer reviewed.
Oh, these are facts.
Live performance of poetry is also peer reviewed.
These are also facts. Yeah, these are facts.
To be clear. But how's that work for you?
It's interesting because the first thing I think about when you said that was peer reviewed. It makes me think, who are the peers? Right? Who are the people in the audience that's going to be receiving, critiquing, applying a rubric, right, to my language? And I think that within a performance space, I don't know if there's more agency there, but I'm at least as a live performance, a scope where I can see my audience, I can see my peer reviewers, right? As an MC, there's a moving of that particular, I can see you, I can connect your eye contact, I can connect with your body language, I can translate what there's a relationship, a call and response. You write about this in your work, about it being reciprocal, right? Yeah, I'm up here, we're in this thing together. And I think that when it comes to the academic scholarship, I'm a lot more intentional, and I would even argue aggressive with the writing, and because writing to me is also a bit of a performance. Yeah. I love to perform on a page. Yeah. I love to convince, and I think convince is the right word, persuade, because it's academia.
Everything is
we're trying to argue. We're making arguments, right? It's making arguments in such a way where it's I need you to put my lens on and read this work to understand what I'm trying to say. Right? Put on my critical race lens. Yeah. Put on my critical queer lens. Yeah. Put on my critical feminist lens. Yeah. Get this lens on so you can see this thing. Right? And I think that for me, when it comes to performing, at least in that academic space, I'm performing for peer reviewers. And most of these reviewers may not even look like me, understand what I'm talking about. And so for me, there's I think if anything in academia, there's a level up. There's this major, I gotta perform a little harder in this space because it's the written space. However, we don't flip the scripts a bit, because I'm thinking about someone like you who believes in putting microphones in classrooms.
Right.
Figuratively and literally, but like, so what does that mean for you? Like, how does that performance show up for you in those spaces?
You know, I think I love that you brought up the classroom space too right there, because, I mean, you and I know.
We are educators.
We are educators. And we are MCs in a classroom, right? We're mastering the conditions of the classroom, moving the crowd of the classroom. But I think I'm also equally challenged. I think maybe even more so, because the classroom for me is an everyday space I live in.
Yeah.
My everyday is not the peer-reviewed academic journal. And I can be, to me, it's about literacy, right? Shout out to Dr. Elaine Richardson, if hip-hop literacies, right? But there's a certain literacy you have to be a dope performer. It's authenticity, but it's also accountability. Something you said about like looking my audience in the eyes. I had to look these students in the eyes every day, twice a week, right? They hold me accountable, and I hold them accountable in different ways. But we are both responsible parties to the meaning that gets co-constructed in that space. In the same way that, as you were saying, in the live performance of the poetry, same thing is happening, right? Yeah. And I think to your point about the peer review, I really do have to perform not in a way that is false.
Yes.
It's not performativity. It's not like I'm here to earn accolades, but not for approval.
Yes.
Right? It's more for, this deserves hip hop, poetry, spoken word, all the critical theories you just named. Intersection. Now, they deserve to be intellectually theorized also.
Yes.
They deserve the exercise of this very particular language. And I'm literate in that too.
I love that. And I would even now make the argument, I'll think about this, that literacy in and of itself is, I was going to say art form, but is a pedagogy, right? There's something more to be said about like understanding not only what you're reading, but interpreting in that and making that like, I feel like that in itself is a performance. To be an academic is a performance. There's a ways in which we perform within academia, whether we perform as rebels and disruptors, which I would easily argue people like you and I are very much disruptors in academic spaces based on what we write about, how we talk about what we write about.
Where we choose to publish.
Yes, where we choose to publish, right? Because we're writing about the academic rigor and the philosophy of hip hop culture. We're writing and talking about spoken word poetry from a spiritual lens and from an academic space. We're writing about and we show up in academia as we are. You mentioned authenticity. I would love for us to maybe navigate in that space, because there's something to be said about like showing up as your authentic self on the page and showing up as your authentic self on the stage, regardless of the context. So for me, I'm like, my stage is going to be this essay that I'm going to write for this particular peer review journal, or if my performance is going to be this thing at an open mic. If anything, as long as I'm showing up authentically myself, that language in that essay needs to also reflect the language that I'm going to use at open mic. Now I might use different words. I'm not going to say epistemology on stage. Actually, I might. I think there's some power to that. But if anything, the way that I would explain epistemology would have to be translated in such a way where, again, I'm always thinking about folks who are not within higher education. Not that it's a bad thing or that it's their fault, but like an understanding that, there is an economy of words that are used in academic spaces that are not outside of academia. So for me, I'm like, I would translate, I have actually translated the word epistemology before. When I was working on my dissertation, I had this young rapper help me analyze some of the transcripts I was looking at. And I was explaining to him, I was like, I'm taking this class to my PhD program right now, and all people are talking about is epistemology. I don't know what this is. I was like, they keep saying it's your way of knowing, but it doesn't really make sense. He says, oh, you mean like my common sense? I said, oh, shoot. Yeah, like it's your common sense. He's like, so like how I naturally think, like how I'm like, yes. Right. And so for me, that's, I think, what that performance might even look like. How can I make this thing or create the kinds of conditions where you are allowed to think and process vocabulary and to come up with words and language that make sense to you? Yeah. That is, I think, a really powerful thing.
Right. Right. So how you then navigate the narrative, the history, the institution of higher education, and hold that intention with your heritage, your identity, how you understand and define success.
Yeah.
And then how do you also manage, I think, as now you're successful, Tom. You won awards. You know what I'm saying? Like academically and now with your trade press books. So how do you hold that and balance, I guess, the tension and responsibility you feel not just to a community or an audience, but also to your own identity, to yourself, right? To your own ethics and standards to say, yeah, I performed at Harvard, which is dope. It opens doors for me. Yeah, I bring girls into the United Nations. I sure do at the UN. Like, this is what we do. But how do I hold that space and say, but that doesn't define success? I don't know. How do you manage?
Yeah, this is so good. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I'm like, yo, you know this about me. And I say this, I've always been like 1 foot in the academy, 1 foot out. There's always this, I think I've always sort of been, and that's probably why I'm slightly a bit of a rebel or slightly disruptive is, I've always been someone very, very rooted in community space, like where I come from, right? Like I talk about Washington, D.C. all day. I love my family. I love my community, but also realize that I'm the only one in my family right now with a PhD, right? A few have now gone on at least got bachelor's degrees, but you also know as a first gen, right? Like trying to navigate that collegiate world and also still trying to stay rooted in the places that.
Because the very place that your community is pushing you to. Wants you to disown your community.
They do. Yeah. And so for me, what that then looks like is a great example would be, it would look like performing a public dissertation defense. Right. And so for the world to know, I defended my dissertation at Busboys and Poets restaurant in Washington, D.C. before I formally defended in an academic space. But for me, it was important. I was like, yo, I want to make sure that my people get this information first and to get it in a way that it makes sense, that it's palatable. They might not understand every single theory that I've used or complex methodology and all that stuff, but they at least understand like, oh, wait, man, I know that Black boy, he didn't like books when he was a kid. He loved to read books now. He went on, became the first person in his family to go to college. Now he's got a PhD and now he's doing his research and he's sharing this research with the community, right? It's making sure that those lines are not jagged and broken and crooked and dotted to academia. It's sort of like, nah, you don't need to be an academic to understand these high level concepts. My grandmother knows racism. You know what I mean? You know, like I was thinking about this the other day. I am the shift gears, but I can't help it. This is where my brain is going. You know, I ran one of the voting centers, and I do this for Washington, D.C. I'm with their state board of elections. I run voting sites during election periods. And so I ran one during this most recent election. And all I kept thinking to myself was like, my mother and my father were both born in 1958. My parents were born without the legal right to vote. I am 1 degree separated from Jim Crow. What? You know what I mean? Like there's sort of this understanding about like who I am. Knowledge of self, shout out to hip hop, and the communities that I come from and the access that they did not have. And I'm like, nah. I'm like this history for me is still too new. You know what I mean? So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, there's some.
No, but so how do you manage the responsibility? Because that's a heavy burden to bear. How do you manage the responsibility of expectations?
How do you?
I mean,
that's the question.
That's what I'm asking you, so I can figure out how do you handle that? First gen college student. What? Like I have found myself asking, what do I owe? What more do I owe? What more do I owe? You know?
Well, you say, oh, what's the debt?
Well, see, this is it. Is it a spiritual debt? Right? Is it a historic debt? It's complicated.
You know what? I think that perhaps, and shout out to Gloria Latson Billings, who, you know, coined that term, educational debt. And I think so much about the work that you and I do. I think that it's not even, I think it's not even restoring the debt, but I think it's it's adding resources to the pot, if that makes sense. I think it's, you know what I mean? I think this idea that like, at least the educational landscape owes Black, brown, mixed people, intersectional, gender, like all it owes us the joyful education, a free education. I think that it owes us that. And I think that the work that we do somehow it's reparations. Maybe not even, I don't even think it's reparations because it's not that we are not the ones, Crystal, who are responsible for the burden and for the debt. It's not us.
But it's recompense. It's restoration.
Restoration might be the right word.
Is that the healing part? You know? But at my court, Tony K. Bombara asked, do you want to be well? Do you really want to be well? Because most people, they think they do, but they really don't. Mm-hmm. But what is our burden of responsibility to our community, to our elders, to the future, to my students? You know, I love this example you gave about the voting centers, because I'm like, you know, we have these conversations in class all the time where it's like, they're like, yeah, you know, but voting and, you know, the government now, and what's the point? And they're worried about ICE raids. Yes. I mean, it's a legitimate threat, you know, and I'm like, you know, people been being deported for years, but it just looks different now. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I guess for me, I have to make the argument like you are privileged right now, and they don't think of themselves as privileged. Yes. But here sitting in a college classroom, that's still a privilege.
It is.
That's still a privilege. It's not necessarily right, but it's true.
Yep. And I think there's something to be said to your point. I'm thinking now about like at least having an awareness of that privilege, right? Like I think that's a thing that and when we talk about like what burden we bear, I think the burden is that privilege. Now, we haven't earned privilege. Yeah. Right? We earned our degrees. We've earned our spaces. We've earned these things. But then you got folks with the unearned privileges. Yeah. Right? The folks who just sort of like can walk in any academic door. The folks who got family with legacies. Right. The ivory tower, like who going to college was easy. Like that sort of thing. And I think so much of the burden that we bear is trying to make sure that, let's just make sure that the thing that we are studying, what we're doing, that is relevant to me, to my family, to the people we care about. Something what I love so much about your particular work, Crystal, is like it's crystal clear that you care. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing is I don't necessarily think that academia cares about me.
They don't.
You know what I mean? And academia I don't think it cares about me.
Right. The institution will never love you. You know what I'm saying? And yet here we are working in it. Yeah, you know, and I think that's my struggle, right? That's
operating in the thing.
Yes, operating in the thing, but not letting the thing operate in you.
Oh, that's it.
That's the part, right? There's a Bible verse. My mom used to quote this to me all the time. She's like, we don't operate by the systems of this world. You're not meant to fit in here. I don't fit in, and I could, whatever, be lonely, And instead of seeking refuge and seeking, it's one thing I think to seek community, but I think it's another to seek my acceptance from an institution that can never love me. And yet here I am trying to transform.
Yep. And academia will love us for it, but right? Because you see. They love us, but they don't love us, right? There's this sort of like...
I love you, but I don't like you.
Yeah, I love your scholarship and what you're producing and this and this. Yeah, but you black, you queer, I can't figure what you are. You still don't love me, right? And so how do you... So, Crystal, you are tenured.
Yeah.
Shout out to being tenured, right? And so you are someone, without a doubt, who moves in this institution slightly differently than someone like me, who's relatively outside, but I did teach and contract stuff like that. But so I'm curious.
Outside by choice, to be clear.
This is true by choice, but also by choice, but also because, again, academia does not love me. And where I live in the Washington, D.C. area, there are very few institutions, at least of higher education, that wants to hire somebody like me, right?
They want you, but they don't really.
Yeah, it's like
you don't want me. You want to be me.
You want to be.
You never wanted me. You wanted to be me.
You wanted to be me. You find me impressive. You are fascinated. You're attracted to me, but I'm too scary for you. I think it says a lot. When I finished my PhD in 2019, it was right before COVID, and I remember applying for all these jobs in higher education, and I have a background as an administrator, but never really as like a full-time faculty. And I'm like, I would love to teach, do research and scholarship, all the stuff that academia says that we should be doing. Right. And I'm applying and applying and applying. And I know I'm a good quality candidate. Right. I couldn't get a single callback, a single interview, and so to some degree it is by choice because I'm now choosing, you know what, I'm just not going to go work full-time in academia anywhere. Right. It was also like, I didn't want that to be my choice, but I had no other choice because I have to survive. I got to eat. You know what I mean? I still got to eat. And so I'm like, how can I eat and survive on the scholarship that I've created? And for me, I'm like, the the scholarship that I've created has always come from community. The community got my back. I know they love me better than academia does, but I also know it's people in academia like you who love me. Right? You know?
So it's almost like, I know for me, it's like leveraging the resources that are there.
Yes.
To bust things wide open for my students.
Can you share more? Because I'm curious, what leverages have you had to, what resources have you had to finesse or put in place to provide that for your students?
You know,
what does that look like?
I think it goes back to that whole translation part, right? So depending on whatever's trendy at the moment, right? So like back in 2015, 2016, the Nike girls campaign, right? If I'm looking at my girls advocacy, girls' rights, our human rights work, girls were popular. You know, there was a whole, Michelle Obama had a whole girls initiative, right? Because anything that's marginalized, it's almost like, they come to the middle and then they go back out, right? They're called to the middle when it's trendy and popping. And then you get your time and then you gotta go. And so for me, that's always like but for some of us, this is real life.
Yeah.
It's not because it's trendy or because there are resources suddenly allocated to it. Like, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the DEI initiatives and things like that. Now, in some campuses, I know they're just calling it by a different name.
Yeah.
Even the same
shifting the language. Yeah.
And so it's thinking about those kind of things. And at what point is the compromise too much? It's back to the question of ethics, right? And I'm like, at what point I can call it right now, there's a big push for career-centered learning objectives on syllabi. There's funding for social entrepreneurship and different kinds of things like this, right? But they want it in my curriculum. And I'm like, at what point do I say, ooh, there's a pot of money? Because, you know, we came up hungry. I don't like leaving money on the table. So I'm going to apply for everything, you know. But at what point do I say, you know what? That is asking for too much. That's too much compromise. But for me, I'm like, y'all got and this is like back to being jack of all trades. You need a cultural program, we got you. You need a poet, we got you. You need a scholar, we got you. You want a little bit of everything, we got you, right? So it's like finding the, I think it's back, we live in the in-between, right? It's back to that tension. So now that the Nike campaign is over and girls are not popular anymore, girls' rights isn't trending anymore, to get money, to get funding, to get support for this gigantic campaign we do every single year has become harder and harder and harder and harder. So it's like, can you remix it until there's nothing of the original left? And then at what cost? You know, at what cost? So I think about that in terms of my classroom space. I think because I think at our core, Tony, we're creatives. Yeah. Right. And if I'm not creating, it's going to get stale. It's going to get bitter. It's going to be unhealthy. So I think as long as I'm able to create something with my students that seek social change or better or healing.
I love that.
You know, and that's going to look different depending on who's in the mix that day in class.
I love this because what I hear so much about what you're saying is because I think my question was around, you know, how have you sort of leveraged assets and resources? And I think that what I'm realizing in this moment is like you recognize that you are an asset, right? You see what I'm saying? Like it's
and
right? And your students also. I will leave it on this regard, but I think that what I hear you saying is like, yo, I am a multidimensional being. I have multiple I can write a rhyme. I can write you a check. Like what I'm like what you need me to do. And like, I am the resource that's being put into these conditions. And this is not like a tyrant dictator kind of thing. It's not like I'm the one, but it's sort of like, yo, you realize that within you are all these gifts, all these different, and you realize that that's what these students need in the classroom. And so like what I hear is you learning how to wield your power, your influence, your multidimensional selves for their
because that's the thing. Like I think about that in terms of like even marketing. Like I've had a lot of people like marketing myself as a scholar because it's all in the industry, right? Like marketing myself as a poet, as an artist, as a performer. But it's like, you know, to what degree do I have to? Just because I can doesn't mean I am.
Yes.
And even if I give you the cheat code, the blueprint, it ain't gonna be me.
Yeah.
And I think I think if I know that about me and what I bring, I can teach my students that. Because that's a knowledge of self.
Knowledge of self,
right? That's a knowledge of self and that's something I've learned in part through a classroom, but never only through a classroom.
Yeah.
I think people like us, educational spaces are beyond the classroom always.
For sure.
But just like me being a scholar is only good because I'm a poet, right? And me being a poet gets better and richer because I'm a scholar. Same is true for my learning environments. What I learned around the kitchen table or at the altar at church or sitting in a graduate school classroom, they need each other.
Yeah.
You know, to be creative. And
you need really fantastic, dope pedagogues. You need teachers. You need people. I'm like, my mother was one of the best teachers ever, right? You know what I mean? Even without like a, traditional, like my mother never sat me down like in a formal classroom, but that woman absolutely taught me about survival, taught me about safety, taught me about how to protect myself in this way. I think and that teaching wasn't in a formalized space. And so I think you're really onto something. We think about the informality and the formality of education. And so while you work within a formal educational space, there's so many of us that also work in education, but in these informal spaces. And you've done that as well with your work at the UN, the nonprofit organizations. And so I think so much about like how they work together. Right. There's this relationship with like the out of school time and the in school time, but it has so much to say about the teachers, the educators, who are the folks facilitating the instruction. Supplying the curriculum, evaluating the learning objectives, like doing the assessment. Like it says something about like who those individuals are. And I think about someone like you and even someone like me, who I'm like, the way we approach that, I don't know, it goes against the green, it just goes, it rubs differently.
So let me ask you about that. Okay. Let me ask you about that because like, surviving, being a college student in order for social mobility.
Yeah.
So now, speaking of leverage, right? Now you're a success.
Yeah.
You are a mainstream success.
I'm outside.
You are outside all the way, right?
Yeah.
So do you run into friction? Have the expectations of the community changed for you?
Great question. I don't think, if anything, it's not that the expectations of community has changed for me. And when I say community, I'm specifically thinking about like my family right now. I think that they somehow believe that there's a bit of a hierarchy, right? In terms of, and I got to figure out, I don't know what the hierarchical structure is, because I don't think it's about intelligence at all. Although my grandmother says things like, oh, grandson, I wish I had your book smarts. I never did well on my tests, like things like that. And I'm sort of like, yeah, but you're still a scholar, grandma. Right. But I think so much what happens now is they say, oh, I didn't want to contact you about this because you're so busy. Right. I don't want to tell you about this tragedy because I know how busy you are. I don't want to disrupt what you got going on. I see the way you moving, son. I see how you moving, grandbaby. Like, I don't want to, pause. I don't want you to know that I had to get surgery. I don't want you to know that such had an accident or somebody passed away. Like, I think that what happens is hierarchy of time. I think that they see themselves on like the lower end of a hierarchy. And, in terms of the time.
Isn't it crazy that the very thing they pushed you to pursue has created a separation?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know about you, because I would love to know about you as well. But I think that for me, that's something that I continue to regularly wrestle with. My family, my aunt loves to call me Dr. Nephew. My grandmother, Dr. Grandson, and I'm like, yeah, and like, I love all that. But I'm also like, I'm still me. I'm still your baby boy. I'm still a little knucklehead down the street. Like I'm still, and I think that for me, that's probably where the rub comes is remaining grounded. Right, remaining, like, I think grounded. I think there's something to be said about like keeping your feet on the actual like ground where like everybody else is. You're right, and realizing that hierarchy can't exist here.
There's no hierarchy in a cipher.
Hey, there's no hierarchy in a cipher. I love that, Doc. I love that. Say more.
I'm thinking about what you were saying about time.
Yes.
Also.
Yes.
And that's something we talked about earlier today. I'm like, time is not linear.
It's not.
It's circular. We've been here before. We've been here before. Looks different now, but we've been here before. This is not new. It's not new territory. It's not new time. But we wouldn't be able to be where we are in the future without the past that we've had.
I love that.
So we can't sacrifice any of it.
Yeah. History informs the present.
Yeah.
I tell young people this, and not just young people, but quite a bit. So I'm like, and this, even today when we were talking about hip hop, right? It's like, there's an entire cultural history, right? That sort of needs to be spoken about. So folks are
informed about sort of what's going on. I just think so much about like how, at least right now, we live in this day and age where we have so much access to information, right? Bookstores are popular up everywhere. You got Google, you got the internet, you got them. Folks can like get access to information in so many different kinds of ways. And we talking before about like AI and anyway, but I'm just thinking so much about like how, I don't know where my thought was going to go, but I was so passionate about it.
With the technology.
Yes.
In the past is the present.
Yes. And the past informs the present. That's what it was. And it was like, yo, we want to think about racism in our society, especially within education spaces, sexism, transphobia, all the things. Those systems are rooted in a history. Mm-hmm. It's not like they just kind of popped up out of nowhere.
Right.
There's a history that informs all of this. There's a history of why DEI programs were created in the first place. There's a history there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to be said about like people like you and I, poets, narrators, with economy of words, to chronicle what's happening in these moments, to share the stories about these very particular times in books, in essays, in poetry format, in teaching our classrooms. Because I'm like, this will inform what's going to happen. 20 years from now, our classrooms ain't going to look the same. They won't. You know, they might not have pentagons like you and I in those spaces. So I don't know, but it might look
holograms.
Like a hologram. Right? Okay, some old ChatGPT up there.
Right.
Look, not ChatGPT.
Listen,
I have learned, I have accepted.
It's a tool.
It is a tool. But this probably to another point is learning how to adapt in the change of a moment and not being resistant to it. And by that, I mean, I was very resistant and had been very much for like AI kinds of things. To go back to our earlier question about what we've seen change, I was so resistant because I'm like, I'm a scholar. I know my voice. I know my voice on the page. I don't need some system to create something for me. And yet I found such uses as like, yo, I've got this ginormous paragraph that is clear and clean and precise and beautiful. And yet I need to reduce it to 7 sentences or whatever, and realizing that there's a tool in place that can do that. You know, I'm still figuring out like how to use AI in that regard, but I'm realizing like I have no choice but to get in on this movement. Otherwise, I'm gonna get left.
Right.
You know, like I'm gonna get left, and I'm like, I don't want to miss out. I don't need to be like drinking all the Kool-Aid, but I don't want to get left out in this moment. Not only started my grandmother started using AI, but my grandmother never used FaceTime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
85-year-old woman will FaceTime me in a heartbeat. She know how to send a text message.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself like, well, okay, if that elder understands that I still must move with the times, I gotta adapt to communicate to stay in community, then I should be able to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I think we're turning to this idea that you brought up earlier about convenience, you know, and using the technology as a convenience. Has that had an impact on and even like in terms like your schedules, your time, your hierarchy of personal time is very different now. You're on tour. Your time is not always your own, right? You're scheduled, you're booked, you've got different things. And those are things we want. They are modicums or manifestations of success to a degree, right? Of social mobility to a degree. But at what point is the convenience, I guess, the tension there? Like I'm curious.
I love that. And the way that I'm thinking about answering that question, I think so much about the word you use with success. And I'm like, yo, and I know I've said this in another moment before, but I really mean this is like something I'm realizing about success. And by success, I mean, the word I use is freedom.
Ooh.
Right? Like I feel very free. And so, yeah, there are folks who say, Tony, we need you to be at this place at this time, at this blah, blah, but also I have a lot of agency within that. And I think that right now, for me, success is looking like intellectual freedom, linguistic freedom, emotional freedom, spiritual freedom, and to some degree, a bit of financial freedom, right? Like I think there's something about like freeing up the things that would typically keep, especially a Black person, sort of oppressed, right?
Yeah.
What does success look like for you? And I know we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
What does it look like for you?
I think it looks like doing what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Like all day today, we kept just saying like, I'm enjoying this. I'm having fun, but we were flowing in our gifts. You know, they say that the gift is never for the giver, right? The fruit is never for the tree, right? But I can measure my success. I've got peace of mind. Yeah. It doesn't mean the world is peaceful. It doesn't mean my circumstances necessarily look the way I want them to all the time. Yeah. But I have peace in the middle of that, right? And I value that so much.
That's great.
So much.
That's great.
This was such a good conversation.
And I value you, Dr. Ian. You're the best, yo. I promise you. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much.
That's you. Shout out to Baldwin.
Shout out.